So when I would wear makeup, they would let me sing for the white girls. When I put on eyelashes and all that, they would let me sing. But when I went as a just straight dude, they wouldn't let me sing.
Now why is that?
Well, they thought I wanted the girls. God gave me the victory. I'm not gay now, but I was gay all my life. I believe I was one of the first gay people to come out.
Little Richard died 5 years ago, and now his family has confirmed the shocking rumors that had swirled around him for decades. Behind the glitter and explosive performances was a life full of chaos, heartbreak, and scandal. As a kid, he was already struggling with feelings he couldn't name, feelings that clashed with everything his church and family told him was right. He battled drug addiction so severe it left his body damaged, a struggle made even harder by the racism and exploitation that surrounded him.
I took so much coke, my nose was big enough to park diesel trucks. My nose was big packed. So much that my membranes would just be coming out on the handkerchiefs, just blood.
Racism, exploitation, and never getting the respect he deserved defined much of his life, even as he shaped rock and roll itself.
I want you all to know that I am the king of rock and roll!
Let's get into it. Richard's childhood had many strange moments, but one of the weirdest things he did was give people his poop as a gift. Yes, it sounds crazy, but it really happened. As a child, little Richard thought it was funny. He would go to the bathroom, put his poop in a box or jar, close it up nicely, and then give it to someone like it was a real present. To him, this was a joke. He thought it was the funniest thing in the world, even if no one else laughed. One of the most talked about times was when he gave a woman a box on her birthday. He had carefully gone to the bathroom in the box, closed the lid, and wrapped it like a special gift. With a big smile, he handed it to her. She looked happy and excited, thinking it was something nice. She didn't open it right away. Instead, she took it home and decided to open it later with her friends. Richard followed her and secretly waited outside her house, hiding and watching. When she finally opened the box and saw what was inside, she screamed loudly. Her scream shocked everyone around her. She shouted, "I'm going to kill him." But Richard, instead of feeling sorry, laughed and laughed. He thought her reaction was even funnier than the joke itself. That moment stuck with him. But that wasn't the only time little Richard played with his poop. He did it again, but this time, he used a jelly jar. He went to the bathroom in the jar and then placed it on the shelf where his mother kept her homemade jelly. He thought it was another great trick. He wanted to see her face when she found it. His mother, however, was not amused. When she saw the jar, she was angry and disgusted. She could not believe her child would do something so nasty. Richard, on the other hand, stood there proud of his prank. His family started to think he was strange. Some said he had a wild sense of humor. Others thought something might be wrong with him. But to Richard, it was all just fun.
When I would wear makeup, they would let me sing for the white girls. When I put on eyelashes and all that, they would let me sing. But when I went as a just straight dude, they wouldn't let me sing.
Richard also looked different from other children. He had a big head but a small body. His eyes were not the same size. One was larger than the other. The biggest issue, though, was with his legs. One of his legs was shorter than the other by about 3 inches. This made him walk unevenly. When he walked, his hips swayed from side to side. His steps looked funny to others, and children at school noticed this right away. They made fun of him, teased him, and gave him mean nicknames. Some even said he was walking like a girl. This hurt Richard deeply, but he didn't let it break him. Even though he was often bullied, Richard tried to stay strong. He used the teasing as a reason to do better. He wanted to prove to everyone that he was just as good, or even better, than the other kids. He became very competitive. If someone did something well, he wanted to do it better. Richard's mother was a woman of faith. She believed in the power of God and thought that church could help her son. She hoped that if he prayed and spent time with God, maybe Richard's leg would be healed. They started going to church often. Richard's leg never got better, but something else happened. In church, Richard discovered something special. His voice. He realized he could sing, and not just any kind of singing. His voice was loud, strong, and full of emotion. People listened when he sang. He could hit high notes that gave people goosebumps. Church became the first place where Richard sang in front of others. It was the beginning of his love for music.
I want you all to know that I am the king of rock and roll.
But life at home was not peaceful. His father, Bud Penniman, was a strict and harsh man. He was a church deacon, so he had strong beliefs about how a boy should behave. He didn't like that Richard acted differently. Richard liked dressing up, wearing makeup, and doing things that were not seen as manly at that time. One day, Richard put on his mother's curtains like a cape and called himself the Magnificent One. Instead of laughing, his father got angry. He couldn't accept his son acting in a way he didn't understand. Bud did not stop at shouting. He became violent. He tied Richard up and beat him badly. It was not just discipline, it was cruel. Richard was still a child, but instead of receiving love and care, he was met with pain and rejection. His father believed that beating Richard would fix him or change him, but it didn't. Finally, Bud made a terrible decision. When Richard was only 13 years old, his father kicked him out of the house. Richard had no place to go, no money, and no protection. He was just a young boy trying to survive on his own.
When you're hungry, you can sing too.
I bet.
When you're down and out, you can sing.
Luckily, help came from unexpected people. A white couple, Ann and Johnny Johnson, took him in. They were kind to him. They gave him food, shelter, and love, something he did not get at home. The Johnsons owned a place called the Tick-Tock Club. It was there that little Richard began to perform music. He sang in front of people and started getting attention for his talent. The very thing his father hated, his music, became his way out. Music gave him a new life. He didn't need anyone's approval anymore. Ironically, after Richard started becoming successful, his father began to change his view. He started to enjoy Richard's music. He even told people he was proud and planned to buy Richard a car so he could travel for shows. It looked like their relationship might finally be healing. But just when things were beginning to turn around, something tragic happened. Richard's father was killed outside his own bar. The man who shot him was Frank Tanner, a friend of Richard's. No one knows the full story. Some say there was a fight about firecrackers. Others say it was something deeper. But what is known is that Bud Penniman was gone. The loss was painful for Richard. Even though his father had been hard on him, he was still his father. It was a deep and sudden heartbreak. To make things even worse, Frank Tanner was only in jail for 1 week. He was let go quickly, and no one ever really explained why. The truth behind Bud's death remains unclear, and it haunted Richard for a long time.
When I came about, everybody thought I was crazy. And they would call the music terrible, and bad.
Little Richard was one of the most exciting performers in music history. His voice was loud and strong, and his music had so much energy that it made people want to dance.
And after, you start winning with it, everybody got on the bandwagon in the boat.
Everybody followed you.
Everybody started claiming and naming and blaming.
But he often felt that the music industry didn't treat him fairly. He believed that racism played a big part in this. He was a black man in a time when white artists were given more chances, more money, and more respect. He worked hard to make his music, but he saw others take his songs and get rich from them. One of the most hurtful examples was with his famous song, Tutti Frutti. He recorded it, and it became a big hit. But then, a white singer named Pat Boone made his own version of the song. Boone's version became more popular, even though many thought it didn't sound as good. Little Richard believed this happened only because Boone was white. He felt that white singers could take black music, make money, and get praise, while black artists like him were left behind.
Music? If you'd been what?
Or if I was been white, Elvis would have never been.
This didn't happen just once. It happened again and again. Little Richard saw other artists, especially Elvis Presley, become world famous by singing songs that were first performed by black musicians. These artists were given the title of superstars, while the people who created the music were pushed to the side. Richard worked hard and gave powerful performances, but he was treated like he didn't matter as much. He said many times that it wasn't fair, and he wanted people to know the truth. He believed that racism in the music world stopped him from getting the success and respect that he truly earned. He often said that he was the real architect of rock and roll. That means he believed he helped build and shape the music we now call rock and roll. He wanted people to understand that rock music didn't just come from white singers. It came from him and other black musicians. But he noticed something strange. When a white artist was called the king of rock and roll, nobody questioned it. But when he called himself the king, people would say self-proclaimed, like he was giving himself a title he didn't earn. Richard believed this was another example of racism. He felt that no matter how much he did, people didn't want to give him full credit just because of the color of his skin.
I want you all to know that I am the king of rock and roll.
Richard's life wasn't only wild on stage. Off the stage, he lived an extreme lifestyle. He did a lot of drugs, especially cocaine. He once said that he spent $1,000 every single day on cocaine. That's a lot of money to waste on drugs. His addiction became so serious that his nose started bleeding badly, and sometimes even parts of his flesh came out when he blew his nose.
I took so much cocaine, my nose was big enough to park diesel trucks. My nose was being packed. So much that my membranes would just be coming out on the handkerchiefs, just blood.
His body was suffering, but he couldn't stop. The drugs took control of his life, and he struggled with this problem for many years. He was honest about it, and he talked openly about how bad things had gotten.
When I was first came in rock and roll, I didn't drink or smoke. I didn't know anything about drugs because I never seen it in my hometown.
His love life was just as wild as his lifestyle. He had relationships with both men and women. He did not hide the fact that he was attracted to both. He also said that he liked watching other people together. One of his girlfriends was named Audrey Robinson. She later changed her name to Angel. Richard met her when she was very young. He claimed that she did things to excite him, like being with other men while he watched. But Angel later said that some of the things he said about her were not true. It's possible that the drugs made him remember things in the wrong way. His life was full of strange and shocking stories, and it was often hard to know what was real and what wasn't. Even though he lived a wild life, little Richard came from a very religious family. His father was a church leader, and many of his family members were preachers. He grew up going to church and learning about God. The church taught him strict rules about right and wrong. As he got older, he started to feel guilty because he wanted to enjoy life, but he also felt like he was going against his faith. His attraction to men made him feel confused and ashamed because his religion taught him that it was wrong. This made his life even harder. He often left the music world to focus on religion, but he always came back to rock and roll because he loved it so much.
I've been seeking, I've been searching.
At one time, he went to college to study religion and wanted to become a preacher. But even there, he found himself getting into trouble. He was caught asking a church leader's son to do something sexual, and this got him in trouble. He tried to make gospel music, but it didn't bring him the success he wanted. So, once again, he went back to his old life of parties, fame, and rock and roll. He kept going back and forth between religion and music, always trying to find peace inside himself.
Famous musical native Little Richard was in a car accident this week. Richard was the front seat passenger in a car that was in a crash in Murfreesboro, Tennessee on Monday.
Even though he tried many times to leave rock and roll behind, he always came back to it. He loved music too much to let it go. He felt happiest when he was on stage, singing and performing.
Yeah!
But deep down, he always felt hurt that the music industry didn't give him the credit he deserved. He knew he helped start rock and roll, but he felt like people tried to erase his name from history. He never gave up, though. He kept telling the world what he had done and fought to be remembered. Little Richard's real name was Richard Wayne Penniman. He was born in Macon, Georgia, and grew up in a big family. He had 11 brothers and sisters. His father, Bud, was a strict man who sold illegal alcohol. As a teenager, Richard struggled a lot with his feelings. He was attracted to men, but he also had girlfriends. At that time, people thought being gay was wrong, so he tried to hide it. He dated women to cover the truth. Some people, like his girlfriend Lee Angel and his wife Ernestine Campbell, didn't think he was gay. They thought he had another problem. He pleased himself too much. Richard once admitted that he did it up to 8 or 9 times a day.
Very brave, because I'm such a fan. You were the first performer, I think, ever to come out and say, I am a homosexual.
Yes, and everybody got mad with me for saying that. You know, I didn't mind telling the world that I was gay. I was gay.
One of the strangest stories he told was about a night with him, his girlfriend, and the famous singer Buddy Holly. He said that Buddy and Angel were together while he watched. Angel got very angry when she heard this and said it never happened. At that time, she was an exotic dancer, and Richard loved being around wild and exciting people. His life was full of drama, and many of his stories shocked people. He had a special way of seeing the world. He believed that everyone had both a male and a female side inside them. He thought people should be free to follow their hearts and love whoever they wanted. He didn't like labels. He wanted people to be themselves without fear. Even with all his struggles, one thing never changed: his deep love for the stage. When he performed, he felt alive. That was the one place where he truly belonged. James Brown and Little Richard had a very unique and interesting relationship. It wasn't simple, but it was powerful. Both of them became huge names in music, but when James Brown was just getting started, Little Richard was already famous. At that time, James was trying to make a name for himself. He had the talent, but people didn't know who he was yet. Little Richard, on the other hand, was already a star with many fans and many shows booked all over the country. Little Richard was so busy that he could not make it to all his performances. His schedule was full, and sometimes he had to miss a show. But instead of canceling, he did something surprising. He would send James Brown to perform in his place. That may sound strange now, but it really happened. James Brown would dress up like Little Richard, wear similar clothes, and perform as if he was him. Because James wasn't famous yet, the people in the audience didn't know the difference. They just came to see a good show, and James made sure they got one. This was a big chance for James Brown. He was not just standing in for someone, he was learning. He got to perform in front of large crowds and build confidence. He also learned how to control the stage, how to excite the audience, and how to bring energy to his performance. These experiences helped shape him into the amazing performer he later became. He didn't waste the opportunity. Instead, he used it to grow and get better. A filmmaker named Lisa Cortez talked about this in her documentary, Little Richard, I Am Everything. She spoke about how Little Richard needed someone to step in for him sometimes, and James Brown was the perfect fit. He could sing well, he could dance, and he had a strong stage presence. Even though he was not yet famous, he had what it took to impress the crowd. Lisa shared this story during a film festival, and many people were surprised to hear it. Little Richard had a big impact on James Brown. Richard was known for his flashy clothes, bold makeup, loud voice, and exciting stage shows. He would scream, jump, and dance in ways no one had seen before. He didn't hold anything back. James Brown watched him closely. He saw how Richard connected with the audience and kept their attention. James wanted to learn all of that, and he did. If you watch James Brown perform years later, you can see some of Little Richard's influence in the way he moved and performed. But it wasn't just James Brown who was inspired by Little Richard. Many famous musicians learned from him. People like Mick Jagger from the Rolling Stones, David Bowie, and even Prince were influenced by Richard's style and energy. They all respected him for his boldness and creativity. Even though Elvis Presley is often called the first big rock and roll star, many people believe that Little Richard was the real beginning of it all. He often called himself the originator, the emancipator, and the architect of rock and roll. That means he believed he started it, he freed it, and he helped build it. James Brown later became one of the biggest music stars in history. People called him the Godfather of Soul because of his strong voice, dance moves, and the way he owned the stage. But James never forgot how he started. He remembered the times when he had to pretend to be Little Richard and perform in his place. Those early moments helped prepare him for his own success. It was like going to school for a musician, learning from one of the best before taking the spotlight himself.
This is a man's world.
The relationship between James Brown and Little Richard wasn't just about filling in for shows. It was about inspiration and respect. Little Richard saw something in James Brown and gave him a chance. James took that chance and used it to become great. They helped each other, in a way. Little Richard opened the door, and James Brown walked through it with confidence. That connection helped change music forever. The film also says that white artists like Elvis Presley and Jerry Lee Lewis were given more credit and attention than Little Richard. It's true that racism played a big role in the music industry. Black artists often had to fight harder to get noticed, and they didn't always get the same pay or awards. But there's more to the story. Little Richard also made choices that affected his career. At one point, he left music to become a preacher. He was very religious and felt he had to step away from rock and roll. When he returned to music, it was hard for him to find the same success again.
Further in music, if you'd been white?
Oh, if I was been white, Elvis would have never been.
The documentary talks a lot about how Little Richard struggled as a black and queer artist. It focuses on his pain and how the industry treated him, but it doesn't talk enough about his actual music. It also doesn't give a full view of his life. It paints him as only a victim instead of showing both the good and the bad sides of his journey. Little Richard was a strong and talented man. He had problems, yes, but he also made great music and changed the world. His story is more than just a sad one.